Good afternoon, everybody. A little bit of an emergency podcast. Or not podcast, really, a live show, podcast, whatever you want to call it. I think everything gets called that now. But I don't know if you can hear the sirens, but Georgia is looking for a new defensive backs coach. Fran Brown, stud, absolutely amazing job done at Georgia these past 2 years. 27-0 since he took over as defensive backs coach. I mean, I wouldn't say he's the primary reason, but he's a big reason for all of Georgia's success over the last couple of years. Has become the head coach, or will become the head coach at Syracuse, according to our sources. We reported that. There was a lot of reports out there, and obviously those from really good people saying he was expected to be named coach. We're reporting that he is set to take that job, an official announcement pending from the Syracuse Orange program. And Palmer, I got a lot of thoughts on this, but my first thought is, after spending a couple of interview sessions with Fran Brown last year during the college football playoff, really big get for Syracuse.
Yeah, very, very well-spoken guy. You raved about it. You got the opportunity to talk to him. I was, off doing, a couple of player interviews. The thing I'll remember about Fran Brown from those playoff interviews the most is how mesmerized by the magician he was. They had a magician there that caught his attention. I think this is a big get for Syracuse. And it's a big move for Fran Brown, to be able to make the jump from position coach, straight from position coach to head coach without any sort of coordinator experience, speaks volumes about him as a person, him, and what people think about him as a recruiter. I know that we're going to get into that angle of it. And that's certainly one it's going to be one to follow, as we're less than a month away from National Signing Day. But Fran Brown, a big, big get for the Syracuse Orange.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we'll talk a little bit about potential names. I'm not going to lie, folks. That's DawgsHQ plus content. You're going to have to come over there and join us, and it's a perfect time to do that. 50% off a year-long membership, or $1 for 1 month, and it's the perfect time to do that. We've got some names we feel pretty good about that being involved in this thing. But ultimately, I look at it like this, Palmer. You're going to have some Georgia fans saying, "Why Syracuse? That's a dead-end job." I mean, listen, I don't know what this guy's going to get paid, $3, $4, $5 million a year, probably somewhere in that window. It's a lot of money to turn down, and it's a guy I have full faith that he can come in there and he can make things better. I just think, and this is no disrespect to Syracuse, it's just kind of the way college football is with haves and have-nots. I just think the first time he experiences some success and the teams come calling, he doesn't need to Matt Campbell it. He needs to Matt Rule it. And get out of town, go get you a better job, keep stepping. But ultimately, he is an absolute force in that area of the country. And that's where we should go next, is to kind of talk about the recruiting impact, because Georgia has 2 guys committed from New Jersey, due in large part to Fran Brown's work. Nair Daniels, offensive tackle, Jordan Thomas, a defensive lineman. I think Georgia's going to have to kind of scratch and claw to keep up to hold on to those guys. And as of right now, as of this very moment, I would say I feel pretty good about Georgia, hanging on to those guys. They have other connections at Georgia. But then you got Ellis Robinson, the top cornerback in the country, originally from Connecticut. Fran Brown was his first offer whenever he was at Rutgers. He went to IMG Academy, got all that stuff going on. I'm sure this is going to be a challenge for Georgia to kind of hold on to him. But Kirby Smart, not a guy you tend to doubt all that often on the trail. And as Rusty Mansell reported over at our site this morning, when he spoke with Ellis and his father back in the summer, they also raved about Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart. So we'll see where everything goes from there. I'm sure that next hire is going to play a big role in that.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how quickly Georgia, works with this. It has been, we've seen some really quick hires. We've seen some, coaching searches that have lasted a little bit longer. In several cases, we've seen some names that get hired that weren't necessarily on these initial hot boards. There certainly Kirby's hiring history has been a little bit of everything. You get a little bit of, and I dove into this, I think it was when Fran Brown got hired. Fran and Chidera were in that same hiring cycle. to me, it feels like, and there have been exceptions, but to me, it feels like Kirby loves the young and upcoming defensive coach. Somebody, because he's very comfortable on that side of the ball, and he's got another guy and that's been a head coach and has that experience and knows what it takes to coach in the SEC, and and Will Muschamp that's been around. I think Kirby likes to mold these defensive coaches to his model a little bit. Versus on the offensive side of the ball, you've seen a little bit more of the veteran, grizzled, experienced guys there, Stacey Searles and Brian McClendon being the most two recent examples there. We talked about it this past offseason. It's rare that you have a year where, like Georgia had this past, offseason, where you don't lose any assistants. I mean, that is absolutely insane, especially off a team that went 15-0 and won the national championship for the second consecutive season. And was well on their way to the number one recruiting class by that point. And, it's crazy to see that kind of consistency stick around. I'm not, as we talk about, Fran leaving, it's not all too big of a surprise to see that trend change a little bit. Georgia was going to lose some guys eventually, whether it was this offseason, next one. It would have been absolutely nuts to see 2 straight off seasons with no coaching changes. So this doesn't come as a huge surprise. I don't know that Fran would have been the one that I would have picked, but he would have been closer to the top than the bottom. And I think that from a recruiting perspective, Georgia is in good hands, like you said, with Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp, 2 gurus of the defense and especially on that back end.
Sorry, I'm muted. I was about to start talking without being muted, but yeah, Georgia does a really good job, and this is something one of the many things I believe Kirby Smart took from his time at Alabama. Of kind of creating that community with the coaching staff. You talk to players all the time, and they'll talk about how they talk to every coach on a visit, and so we'll see if that pays off in this instance. But this is the cost of doing business. You got an elite recruiter of a coach. He goes out and gets an elite recruit, builds a strong relationship with him. You hope that the kid committed to the school as opposed to the coach. But that's just never the reality, because the coach is the kind of the vessel through which they learn about that school and through which they fall in love with that school. And, listen, Ellis Robinson's a stud prospect. I think Georgia it won't have the number 1 class, but it will be just fine without Ellis Robinson. It will be much better with Ellis Robinson. And again, I mean, if there's any school in the country, if there's any program in the country more equipped to hold on to him at this point with this kind of circumstance, I'd like to see it. There aren't very many. Maybe Alabama, maybe Ohio State. I'm sure other teams are going to fight to get in there. But Ellis Robinson's a big-time prospect, and it was probably going to be a fight to the very end without this. And now Georgia's just going to have to work hard. And the good news is, folks, Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, they like working hard. So, and like you said, they get on it. As far as a hire.
I like what Matthew C says here in the comments about Fran to Syracuse. That this is an opportunity, for him as a head coach, being a guy that is so well connected up there in the Northeast, it's a gold mine of sorts. That one that's not necessarily, there's not necessarily the elite prospects, but you've got a lot of diamonds in the rough, like he says there. And, I think that somebody that has those connections and has that track record of success up in the Northeast, spent time at Rutgers, like we said, in his home state. He's originally from New Jersey, spent time at Temple, actually interviewed for the head coaching position there, maybe even twice, if I'm not mistaken. But to get this kind of an opportunity in an area that he's plenty familiar with, I think that, for Syracuse, this could be a home run hire. Maybe not is the, in terms of the headline, you're not maybe going to win the hire right away, but this is one that I feel like could pay off, especially as college football is changing. And, we're seeing, 3 new teams go into that ACC. Definitely an opportunity there for Syracuse and Fran Brown there.
No question. And, good. First of all, congratulations to him for going from position coach to head coach. it makes a lot of sense. And I really do think Syracuse made a good hire. And I really do think he'll do some good things in short order there. Potential names. Now, here's the thing, Palmer. We always put these lists together, and we immediately jump to the guys that Kirby has a connection to or has a connection to the staff. And then lo and behold, he never hires anybody with a connection to the staff. And I guess he did with Mel Tucker. But Charlton Warren kind of came out of left field. Jamal Adai came out from behind the left field bullpen upper deck. I did not expect that one really at all. And Fran Brown, too, just as surprising. With that said, we've got some names on a list over at DawgsHQ. Go check it out. And one of the names I'll bring up, another one is on a staff that just got fired, and probably the one that we probably have the best vibe about right now. I'm not going to reveal that one, but one I will talk about is TJ Rushing at Texas A&M. Now, Mike Elko did just get hired as the head coach there, and TJ Rushing did work with Mike Elko for 2 years and put together one of Texas A&M's best pass defenses in 2021 with Mike Elko as head coach. As defensive coordinator. But TJ Rushing is a guy that I find extremely intriguing because he played in the NFL. He's been an on-field coach everywhere from Northern Arizona all the way to Texas A&M, Memphis, Arizona State. He has put some really good pass defenses on the field. That's one that I'm looking for right there, especially with the staff change. I think that might have been a little bit of a long shot last year. With Texas A&M deep pockets with some transition, might be time for some new blood there. But that is one name I kind of want to look at. Is there any other name, Palmer? And I'll give you a second in case you weren't thinking about one. Don't give away the good one.
No. I got one, and it's not the one that you don't want to give away. Zach Etheridge is one that, caught. He was very in this last time. With now, maybe you don't want Auburn, any association to Auburn DBs after this past Saturday. I would understand that. But this is again, another younger assistant, that I feel like Kirby could maybe mold. He's an Auburn guy, and so it would be hard to pry him away from the Plains there. But and especially after he got retained on Hugh Freeze's staff, but again, somebody that's having, that's a program that's having some recruiting success, a young guy, would not surprise me and he was involved in it last time. So would not surprise me to see his name, in the thick of this again.
Awesome. All right, guys, Fran Brown to Syracuse, official announcement from the school pending. I will say this. Rusty and I were talking about it earlier, and Georgia hired a head coach one time that talked to the team and then didn't take the job. So these things are never absolutely locked in certain. But according to the notes that we've compared over at DawgsHQ, talking to multiple sources, multiple people talking to multiple sources, this is set to happen. And we're reporting it to you here. We've got a list of early names to keep an eye on over at DawgsHQ. And again, if I need to remind you, 50% off your first year over at DawgsHQ membership. Listen, it's only going to pick up from here. I was thinking this morning, this was a cold December morning in November. This is just a little bit earlier than we expected it to be for Georgia. December is going to be a lot more active, and you're going to want to be over at DawgsHQ so that we can report it to you, and then we can talk about it with you. So you all take care, and we'll be back tomorrow night with Wednesday's edition of The Georgia Show.